I'm Bruce Davis, and I'm a member of the NNOA Transition Assistance Team. Before I give the introduction, I want to go over a few administrative items. As part of its purpose, the NNOA Transition Assistance Team offers experiences of those in business, nonprofit, government, entrepreneurship, and academia. Today's chat is focused on the unique experiences of our speaker, with an emphasis on entrepreneurship. You can either use the chat or the Q&A feature to ask questions, submit questions. We will field your questions at the end of the talk, but you can submit the questions at any point. It is my distinct pleasure to introduce Mr. Bruce Hacker. Bruce Hacker is a 1985 graduate of the United States Naval Academy, where he majored in applied computer science, was president of the Big Brothers and Big Sisters, served as a 36 company commander, and participated on the honor board, among other activities. I met him there as we were both incoming plebes and were roommates for the last 3 years. While on active duty, he completed multiple tours as a naval supply officer while stationed aboard 2 amphibious assault ships. As department head, his department was awarded the Navy Blue E for overall excellence in supply department operations. After transitioning from the Navy, Bruce worked as a project manager, software engineer, and database administrator for several Hampton Roads technology firms. And in 2004, he founded and currently serves as the president of InteropNet, a small business that specializes in providing information technology and professional support services to commercial and federal clients. In 2019, InteropNet was selected as the Small Business of the Year for the city of Virginia Beach. Furthermore, his company has been recognized by Inc. magazine as one of the fastest growing companies in America, and in 2021, as one of the fastest growing veteran-owned small businesses in the nation by the Institute for Veterans and Military Families. Bruce Hacker is active in the community. He's a graduate of the Civic Leadership Institute, a former board chair of Volunteer Hampton Roads, and current board member with the Hampton Roads Committee of 100 Plus Men. He is also an active supporter of the Citizens Committee to Protect the Elderly, the Food Bank of Southeastern Virginia, and the Wounded Warrior Project. He is the son of Rear Admiral and Mrs. Ben and Jean Hacker. Before he shares his naval service transition experiences, he will give us some information in honor of his father, the late Rear Admiral Ben Hacker. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Bruce Hacker.
Well, I'd like to thank you, Bruce, for that very kind introduction. Bruce and I met as plebe summer, 1981 at the Naval Academy. And as luck would have it, we were assigned to the same
Mr. Hacker, you need to unmute.
Okay, are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'd like to thank you, Bruce, for that very kind introduction. Bruce and I met as plebe summer, 1981 at the U.S. Naval Academy. And as luck would have it, we were assigned to the same company, 36 Company, and have just been very close friends ever since. So I appreciate that intro. And I'd also like to thank the members of the NNOA Transition Assistance Committee for all that you do to educate and inform those who are looking to make the transition from military to civilian life. When I was asked to share my story on the topic of entrepreneurship with this group, I was happy to be able to participate. The opportunity to address this group is very special to me. because of the affection and commitment that my father, who I will introduce you to in just a moment, had for the National Naval Officers Association. So again, I'd like to thank the committee for allowing me a few minutes just to introduce my father, Rear Admiral Benjamin T. Hacker, who was a trailblazer for all naval officers, but particularly those in the naval aviation community. So I'm gonna share my screen here. Okay, give me just 1 second here. I'm having trouble with this screen share. Here we go. Okay, can you let me know, are you all able to see the my shared screen?
We actually see your desktop with all the photos as opposed to the individual ones. Maybe you click on the first one and the rest will flow.
Okay, let me try that again.
Okay.
Is it, are you able to see it now?
We got it. It's good.
Okay, fantastic. So, my father, Admiral Benjamin T. Hacker, was born in 1935, graduated from Wittenberg, Springfield, Ohio, in 7. After completing Aviation Officer Candidate School in Pensacola in 1958, he was commissioned an ensign and subsequently received the designation of Naval Flight Officer. His experience as a tactical coordinator in P2s and P3s included numerous operational assignments to the far reaches of the Atlantic, Pacific, and the Mediterranean Sea. He took command of U.S. Naval Facility Barbados, West Indies in 1968. In 1972, he established the Naval ROTC unit at Florida A&M University in Tallahassee, Florida, and served as its first commanding officer and professional of naval science for this unit. In 1974, he became the commanding officer of Patrol Squadron 24, which was a P3C Orion squadron stationed in Jacksonville, Florida. In June 1978, he completed studies at the National Security Policy and Industrial College of the Armed Forces and earned his Master of Science degree in administration from George Washington University in Washington, D.C. In August 1978, he was assigned as Commanding Officer, Naval Air Station, Brunswick, Maine. In 1980, he was selected for flag rank and assumed duties as Commanding Officer, U.S. Military Enlistment Processing Command with headquarters in Fort Sheridan, Illinois. In 1982, he became the Commander, Fleet Air Mediterranean, Commander, Maritime Surveillance and Reconnaissance Forces, 6th Fleet, and Commander, Maritime Air and Mediterranean Forces with headquarters in Naples, Italy. In 1988, at the completion of his assignment as Commander, Naval Base San Diego, he retired from the U.S. Navy. He was the first naval flight officer in the history of the U.S. Navy to be selected for flag rank. He held 10 commands over the course of his 30-year military career And included among his personal decorations were the Defense Superior Service Medal, the Legion of Merit with 3 gold stars, and the Meritorious Service Medal. In 2005, the U.S. Navy named CTF 67 headquarters building in Sigonella the Benjamin T. Hacker Building in his honor. After retiring from the Navy, he served as the director of the California Department of Veterans Affairs and also held posts as a regional senior vice president and general manager for USAA in the company's Western region, headquartered in Sacramento, the Mid-Atlantic region, headquartered in Norfolk, Virginia, and also served as the executive vice president for USAA in San Antonio, Texas. His life touched countless people, and his efforts paved the way for many to follow. Throughout his military and professional careers, he worked tirelessly in support of equal opportunity initiatives. And in his own life example, he symbolized what was right about the United States military, what was noblest and best. So I'd like to thank you again, just for that opportunity to kind of spend a few minutes introducing the group to my father, and it means a lot to me. So I think with that, let me try to. Yeah. So I thought what I'd do here tonight for this talk is just kind of. I'm going to be speaking to you all just kind of from the perspective of someone who chose to separate from the Navy as a junior officer about my entrepreneurial journey. I'll spend a little bit of time talking to you about my life pre-transition, and then the remainder of my time reflecting on the post-transition phase of life for me. I have always enjoyed reading and hearing stories about those who have been able to successfully start their own businesses. And as a matter of fact, I recently came across a file that I began keeping as a junior officer when I was out deployed on my first ship, of just articles that I came across of people who had successfully been able to start their own businesses, and just kind of, wanting to better understand and appreciate that journey. So for me, for as long as I can remember, I had the desire to be a pilot. The fact that I grew up on and around naval air stations probably had a lot to do with that. But my goal from a very early on, as far back as I can remember, was to fly jets. And I wanted to fly either for the Navy or the Air Force. And so back when I was, I think probably about 11, 12 years old, I managed to, talk my parents into allowing me to begin taking flying lessons at a sailplane field. We were living in Vienna, Virginia at the time, and there was a sailplane or gliding club in Warrenton, Virginia. And so I was able to kind of talk my way into being able to take lessons out there. Now, I didn't have any money to pay for the lessons. And so what I would do is my father would actually drive me about halfway out there every Saturday. I'd meet up with one of the other instructors who was heading out. We'd, complete the drive. And then myself and one other young man would just kind of work the line. We'd work the field and move the planes around. And in return for doing that, during the day, we would earn flight credits. And so that's how I originally, began to learn how to fly. By the time I was 13, had soloed in a glider, and from my perspective, was just kind of, on my way toward kind of developing my skills and getting myself ready to be able to do what I wanted to do. Got my appointment to the Naval Academy and, reported there back in '81. Again, that's where Bruce and I met, plebe summer. And it was at Annapolis that I guess year 2 or year 3 that I got my first introduction into the field of, it wasn't called computer science at the time, but basically just computer programming. And so took my first course in, programming languages, COBOL, Fortran, PL1, C. And I just absolutely loved it. I think more than any other course that I took there, it was the computer programming that really, really appealed to me. So I decided that that's kind of, what I wanted to focus on and study. And so ended up just kind of, proceeding along those lines. At some point in there, we discovered that I had a color vision deficiency. And so took the test for color vision repeatedly, many, many times, just trying to see if there might be any way that I could get past that, and just was not able to do it. So bottom line is I ended up having to choose from a couple of options in the restricted line community. So I elected to go Naval Supply Corps because I did have an interest in business, and I thought that that would just be, an interesting line to pursue. So as graduating from Annapolis, went down to Athens, which is where the Navy Supply Corps School was at the time, did my tour there, reported to Naval Amphibious Base Little Creek, where I did a division officer tour aboard one of the amphibious assault ships. Shortly after I got there, we made our 6-month med deployment. And I loved everything about that. I really enjoyed, my time as a division officer. As luck would have it, we returned from our first deployment, and I think had been back maybe 2 or 3 months, and I was contacted by Sir Flant and my detailer, and they informed me that something had happened or taken place on our sister ship. And the supply officer had to leave, and they wanted to know if I, would be willing to take over as suppo. And so, I did that and reported to that ship for duty. That was the USS Manitowoc. And within a couple months later, we were off to the Med again for another 6-month deployment. So did that, had just a marvelous time, working with everyone on board the ship, my department, other departments. It was just a really, really formative time for me in terms of just kind of understanding and kind of honing my skills when it came to leadership and management. After that second tour, I reported to the Naval Supply Center in Norfolk, and we were kind of getting to the point where, I was kind of coming up on, my initial obligation after coming out of the academy. And I had pretty much always told myself that, if I choose to, to get out, I want to do it right then. Didn't want to wait around for an extended period of time and then decide that, I wanted to do something different. So, I transferred from active duty to the reserves. And as soon as I separated, I started my first business. And so that was a direct order, direct mail reminder service. And I won't go into all the details of it right now, but it was, those were pretty exciting times, because I was able to leverage some of the things that I had learned at the academy as far as software development, wrote a program to kind of run all of the back office and help me with order fulfillment, and just learned a lot of lessons about about running a business. I was not able to do that successfully. And so after about a year or so, it just kind of got to the point where I needed to, needed to do something, elected to take a position I applied to a couple of companies locally, and, got on with one as a deputy program manager for logistics. And obviously my background being supply corps helped with that. So, in that capacity with that company, I was kind of assigned to kind of clean up and take care of some challenges that we were having at a number of our warehouses across the country. I think when I got there, our inventory validity on any given day or week was probably below 50%. So, after understanding what was going on and what we needed to do, I ended up writing an application, an inventory management system that the company started using. We started using it in all of our warehouses. And I think within a matter of probably about 18 months or so, our inventory validity went up to probably about 95% or so. So again, just a very, very exciting time. Now you got to remember that this was early 90s. So the internet really was not a thing. Email, folks were using email, but there just were not the depth or breadth of applications that you have out here today to do just about anything and everything. So I was very fortunate to, just have that opportunity to kind of start honing my skills in the area of software development again. Did that for a number of years. That program, that contract changed. I went to the new company and continued on. And at a certain point, just decided that I kind of wanted to go even deeper in the area of software engineering. And so I took a job with another company that was based out of Reston, but had an office down in Hampton Roads as a software engineer. And so, was able to kind of further, enhance my skill set in the area of software development. Ended up becoming certified as what was called a Oracle database engineer, which was a really big certification at the time. And so did that for a number of years, and then went to work for another company locally that focused on basically doing websites for new and used car franchise dealerships. And, there were only a couple of companies in the country, believe it or not, that were doing this at the time, websites specifically for car dealerships. And so basically, what we would do, or what that company was doing, is kind of dialing into each one of these systems. And there were roughly 6,000 of them that we were working with every night after hours. And we would extract what we could as far as inventory. We would enhance it, and then, basically clean it up, match it with a photo, Vindicode it, and get it ready to put out on the website for the next day. But the process that they had in place was kind of clunky, to put it mildly. And so I assembled a team, and we rewrote our back-end data management system from scratch, so that we kind of had a multi-threaded system that could dial out to probably about 3 to 4 dozen, dealerships at any one time, extract their inventory and process it really in a matter of about 20 to 30 seconds. And so over the course of a couple years or so, we just kind of totally revamped that process. And so that too was just a lot of fun, in terms of just kind of honing my skills and just kind of doing work in software development and leading a team there. As luck would have it, that company was, we were eventually bought out by a Fortune 500 firm that was based out of Dayton, Ohio. And so, kind of, received a promotion there and went on to kind of run a division. But as large companies do, they tend to, just, buy smaller companies as a kind of a growth strategy. And so, they went on to purchase another small company that was based down in Dallas, Texas. And over time, the decision was made to kind of merge the work that my group was doing with the merge that, the new company was doing down in Texas. And, I was asked to, to transition down there, basically to lead the effort here, but eventually transition down to Texas. It really wasn't something that I wanted to do for a number of reasons. My family had moved here, and we had a number of things going on at the time. And so, basically, structured a deal with them to basically assist and make sure that that transition went smoothly. But, at the same time, when the time came, I would separate and remain here in the Hampton Roads area. So that all went well. Got a little bit of a nice little package there to kind of make sure that transition was successful. And right after I left that company is when I started my current company, Interop. So this was back in early 2000s. I guess it was probably around 2004 or so. And so Interop, I had a non-compete with my previous company, so I was not going to be able to do anything for the automotive industry. So decided to kind of take what we were doing and kind of some of those lessons learned and basically apply it to another industry, which was the association industry. And so, I hired on a couple folks that I had relationships with, and we wrote a system over the course of a couple months, specifically designed to help small staff associations and membership organizations do things like manage their membership, update and manage their website without having to get a third party involved, to process registrations for conferences, to run credit cards, just a whole host of things. And did that for a number of years. I mean, basically it was just me and really one other person. So I was responsible for all of the, basically the support and the marketing, a lot of time on the road, going to trade shows and setting up a booth and just trying to educate, our target market about our offering and what we could do for them. Did that for a number of years. 2007, 2008 is when the recession hit. And as it turns out, the association industry was, as you can imagine, they were hit very hard. A lot of, their income comes from membership dues, and that, tends to be discretionary. And so bottom line is I had to pivot, pretty quickly. And so had made, several connections over the years and learned a few lessons on the, the DoD contracting side. And as luck would have it, we were able to secure a small piece of work, actually doing work for the Department of Homeland Security. And then shortly thereafter, we got a significant, piece of work with one of the local shipyards. And so Interop was running the what was called the computer center for one of the local shipyards, which was a 24/7, 365 operation. And yeah, it was just a very fast-paced time, a lot of fun. Did that for a number of years, and just kind of slowly over time, have been able to, to grow that business. The experience that I got from, basically being in the military and, I was able to leverage my experience in the area of software development. At the time, I didn't really think, a whole lot of it, but it really made a major difference in terms of just kind of our credibility and our ability to kind of, convince, our first set of customers that we were going to be able to pull off and support this effort in the manner in which, in which they expected. So, that was that. I've had an opportunity to work for, as I said, a number of small businesses, a couple of large businesses, obviously the U.S. Navy being the largest. And, over the years have just kind of, I came to find that, all things being equal, I prefer to work with small business. Certainly nothing wrong with the large businesses, but they obviously have lots of resources, processes, and procedures. But it was the small businesses where I felt like I could have the most impact, and where my voice could be heard. Once I had kind of gained credibility, and the organization understood that that I was working in their best interest. And so that kind of stuck with me, and I think also led me to just kind of want to go down this path of or continue on the path of being a small business owner. So today, Interop, while we started out with a custom software piece specifically for the association industry, we have now transitioned, as small businesses have to be able to do, to the point where pretty much all of our work is IT support services. We're doing pretty much all of our work on the federal side. We have 80 full-time employees doing work across 5 states. We're currently doing work in support of the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, and the Department of Homeland Security. So that's kind of my journey in an abbreviated nutshell. I'll now take a minute just to kind of talk through some of the I guess some of the lessons that I've learned over the last 30 or so years that I've been at this. For anyone who is an aspiring entrepreneur or thinking about taking that path, obviously, as with anything, you want to make sure that you do your research and that you have a plan. There is a tremendous amount of information out there that's freely available, been compiled by the U.S. Small Business Administration to kind of help you understand some of the basics. I guess secondly, you got to be willing to take risk. They need to be calculated risks, but at the end of the day, at some point, you gotta take that step into the deep end. There will be failures. I have failed at many things over the years. I think the real key, though, is just to be able to learn from those failures when things don't quite go as expected, because that's really a fundamental part of being an entrepreneur. I think that the next thing that I would share is just I'm sure that you've all heard about just the importance of networking. When I was in the Navy, active duty, I just did not have time for anything else. You don't really have a whole lot of time to participate in things outside the Navy just because of the sheer amount of task and work that you typically have going on as a junior officer. But once you kind of step away from that, either retire or transition, what have you, I think that there are some fundamentals that really come into play when you talk about networking. And when I think back to my time working with associations, I actually learned quite a bit about that industry. One of the things that I found is that in this country, I think today there's roughly 92,000 associations. And I'm talking specifically just about trade and professional associations. So, for anybody who is, aspiring to make a change, I would strongly recommend that you try to target and understand which professional associations are in line with whatever it is that you want to do. And then, join, kind of understand the organization of the association. Most of them tend to run or kind of be powered by committees. And so I found, that when I was looking to, at certain points in my life, I would, join a particular group. Let's say it's AVSEA, for those who are interested in, DoD contracting or that sort of thing. That's a great group to be part of. But, join a committee, get involved in the committee, volunteer your time. And inevitably, by doing that, you will, come in contact with other people who would just be kind of, good folks to know and to have in your corner. So, that's what I mean by networking. I'm sure that you've probably all been to events where and maybe it's a Chamber of Commerce events where folks are just kind of running around and handing out business cards, and but you don't really know the person or get to know what they do. And in my experience, that is never that is not a successful way to network. The other thing that I've learned is just the importance of, when possible, having a mentor. And for me, my father was my first mentor, and obviously it just doesn't get much better than that. But I also was fortunate enough to be able to to kind of be able to form a relationship with a couple of folks locally who had businesses, had been successful, and over the course of some time, I just approached one of them and asked if he would be open to my just kind of coming by maybe once a quarter and having a conversation, kind of bouncing some ideas off of him. And he agreed to do that, and that was tremendously helpful to me. Especially in the early years. I never asked anything of my mentor. I certainly wasn't looking for a job or, any sort of work for my company, but it was more about just trying to learn some lessons, so that I, didn't have to learn them the hard way. The mentorship is very important. And then, I guess the other thing I would get to is just the importance of really understanding, and you just do this by being in the arena, but basically understanding kind of the fundamental pillars of whatever business it is that you are interested in getting into. So, if it's a product business, obviously understanding that product. If it's a service business, understanding, the services that you provide. Marketing and business development are key. How to structure your accounting system is key, especially if you're going to, think about doing work on the federal side. It's really key for any business, but doing work as a contractor requires certain things of your accounting system that are not required if you're in the commercial arena. And then the last is technology. And so I was very fortunate that I've always been kind of, fairly tech savvy. But, even if you're not, and many people aren't, you just want to make sure that you've got, someone in your corner who is, because, that's just, that's just something that is fundamental and very necessary these days, especially. I guess the last thing that I would say is just kind of emphasize is the importance of just kind of embracing the journey. So I think that, opportunities today are as plentiful as they have ever been. So, you got to be aggressive with tact in whatever you choose to do. Be prepared to make mistakes, learn from them, and, as you move forward in your profession, whether it be, academia, private business, career as a naval officer, um, you find that as you are, the more successful you are in any, given field, the greater the competition is, but there's nothing wrong with that. So, that's kind of what I wanted to share. I guess I'll kick it back over um, to you all to see if there are any questions.
All right. Thank you, Bruce. At this point, I want to just ask a question, and it has to do with your listen. First of all, thank you for that presentation. I mean, that was excellent on several levels. The opening, the recognition of Admiral Hacker, and then your story, where you lay out these lessons learned. I mean, it's pretty much in line with what we've been preaching as a transition assistance team. So we're going to ask this question, and it has to do with the failures. Your presentation was very positive. And we know that in developing a business, there's going to be some failures. I want you to describe something that you see as maybe a failure or two, and what you did to overcome those failures.
I would say I have had a plethora of of failures. I think back to early on, my very first business. I had ideas, coming out of the military that I had done my research and I had done a lot of reading, and I thought I knew what to expect, but the fact of the matter is you don't know what you don't know. And so, I thought that I understood, with my first business, just what it was going to take to market and do the business development, effectively. And I kind of put that plan into action, but, reality kind of has a way of hitting. And, after I'd say about 3 or 4 months, even though we were kind of growing and progressing, it was taking a lot longer than I had anticipated. And, certainly longer than I, was going to be able to afford to, to wait. And so, fortunately, I had a contingency plan in place, and, I knew of a couple of firms in the area that, I thought anyway, that, if push come to shove, that I'd be able to, secure employment with. I guess to get back to your question, it was, it was a learning experience. I ended up going to work as this deputy program manager for a local engineering firm, and actually several other companies. But that whole time, I kept my business going. And so I kind of set things up, with my, this software program that I had run, so that I could come home in the evening, grab a bite to eat, and then, hit go. And certain things would happen, letters would be generated, so on and so forth. So I just basically had to stuff envelopes and then, get them in the mail on my way out the next morning. And so, it's not so much about the failure. It's just about, learning from it and adjusting, appropriately, or as best you can. So I think that, some folks would look at that as, maybe it kind of comes down to, are you a glass half full or glass half empty type of person? So I tend to be a glass half full. and, try to, learn lessons, make adjustments, and then, keep things moving forward.
All right, good. In your presentation, you spoke about several times that your business had to shift gears because the market was changing. Could you speak to that a little bit, like a couple of those times when it was no longer the association, but I want you to talk about the significance of a business being able to recognize that that what they were trying to do was not working, and then the speed with which you picked up on that and then changed gears.
Yeah, I think that, so again, that kind of gets back to the point that I made earlier as, I guess kind of one of the advantages of small business. And, as an entrepreneur, you're learning things constantly, and you're having to make little adjustments and, try to move things forward and make things better. And so, the focus that Interop initially had on the association community was, I learned lots of lessons there. Fortunately, I was able to do that, I guess kind of execute in that phase of Interop in our business for probably about maybe 4 or 5 years. And like I said, it was the recession that really, really hit us hard, hit our customers hard. So, that meant that it hit us hard. And so again, it just kind of gets back to the advantage, I think, of being on the small business side is that, if you are learning those lessons and just kind of, paying attention to which direction the wind is blowing, you can pivot and make, the necessary adjustments. So after, when the recession hit for us, I think that, our sales really got cut in half, and very tough time. So I actually ended up, continuing to run the company in the evenings, but I went to work as an independent contractor for a local company that was doing software development for the pharmaceutical industry. And so, I do that during the day, and then, continue to kind of, do what I could at night to run my company. And it was probably along that time that I just decided, we've got to make I got to make a harder pivot. And was able to kind of, pivot to the, I guess the defense side. I'm in Hampton Roads. And so this is a pretty big area for, for the DoD community. I mean, we've got Army, Navy, Air Force, DHS, NOAA, you name it. We've got a little bit of everything. And matter of fact, some folks refer to this area as Pentagon South. So, I was fortunate there. Sometimes it does take a little bit of luck. But yeah, that's, I think that most small businesses will find that, from time to time, you just kind of have to reinvent yourself. And so, you just try to stay wide-eyed and do things that are going to, allow you to keep going, and also obviously do everything that you possibly can to take care of your people. So I guess, one of the things that I believe very deeply in is just trying to take care of all of our folks through our benefits offering, through, the salaries that we offer, because I find that if we are taking care of our folks, then they're, going to feel much more inspired to, kind of feel good about the company and to take care of our customers. And, if they're taking care of our customers, then our customers are going to feel better about us as well. So it's just it's a win-win-win.
Excellent. I have another question. Also, before I ask this question, any other participant, if you have questions, please enter it in the Q&A or the chat. We're nearing the end. I'll ask this question. I happen to know that you're involved in other things beyond what we indicate in your resume and in your introduction. I want you to speak to the significance of having balance in what you're doing: family, church, relationships. I know that you were involved with music. I know that you're physically active. Could you just talk about that balance and how they kind of feed each other?
I think it's key. It's easy, when you're just like, when you're active duty. I remember aboard ship, it was not uncommon for us to put in, 16, 18-hour days. And, that was just kind of the way it was. But, as an entrepreneur or as a business owner or, it's easy if you allow yourself, you're just putting so much time into the company and trying to make good decisions and, grow the business. You can kind of get to a point where you, at times, just kind of, I don't know. It has a way of just kind of, overtaking you and harming other relationships, and you certainly, I don't ever want that to happen. At the end of the day, I think you have a number of balance sheets as you go through life, and one of them, is certainly financial, but I think the more important one is just has to do with relationships, that you've developed, and your relationship with your family and people that you've met. I have really enjoyed, since I came off active duty and kind of got to the point where I was able to, once I had kind of gotten settled with the company, got to the point where I was able to start to do some things in the community, with a couple of local organizations that focus on trying to provide good experiences for young men, and that's just been very, very rewarding to me. I've had an opportunity to meet some really great men, and that I count as friends, and I think at the end of the day, that's that's what really matters. So.
Okay. Is Admiral Harris on tonight?
He is not.
Okay.
Is it possible we could hit a couple of those quick hitters that are in the chat?
I actually don't see any in the chat. I must have entered a different way. So if you could
Okay.
please ask those questions.
Yeah, let me give you a quickie here. It's just, if your military job is all consuming, then how do you establish your network? You talked about the importance of a network.
Yeah, it's very hard to do. There's no easy answers there. And so I know with me, back when I was active duty, I had time to do a little bit of volunteer work. I actually worked with a tutorial program at our church, in Norfolk. And I think all that I could spare on a weekly basis was maybe, a couple of hours. And so I certainly did not have time to join associations and do committee work, volunteer, and that sort of thing. That's just the reality of it. So I say that just to kind of let you know that when you do get to a point where you have an opportunity to to do some of that, what I would call effective networking, that that's a good way to go about doing it. Join an organization, a professional group that is focused on whatever it is that that you're interested in, and like I said, learn the committee structure, get involved, do some volunteering, and I think that you'll find inevitably that you will start to form some really solid relationships with people, that, you never know where those could take you.
Very good. Excellent advice. One note for your bio book. One of our attendees remembers, and I remember this as well, many of us remember, there was a point in NNOA's history where it became financially strapped. I mean, almost to the point of danger of going out of business. Your dad spearheaded a fundraising effort that got us solvent again and probably saved the organization. And so who knows if we would even be here today if it wasn't for him spearheading that effort and using his influence to get us back on solid ground again. So we remind you of that.
I appreciate that. I actually, in going through some of the old files, I came across some of that correspondence, but I appreciate you just kind of pointing that out and reminding me of it. That's great.
Absolutely. BZ to Tina Caston, she's been a loyal and hardworking member of this organization for a long time, and she posted that up in the chat. Finally, I think, one question here is, are you willing to be contacted for advice and mentorship from anyone who's a part of the organization? And if so, what's the best way to contact you to do that?
Yeah, I would be willing to, to help out and certainly, pass on any, lessons learned. I think that maybe what I would suggest is I'll just give my email to Bruce, and he can disseminate it.
Very good. We'll post it up in the TAT website or wherever is convenient, and get it out to whoever's interested in having it. Finally, this one's a personal interest to me. Is I know it had to be a very difficult decision for you to transition out of the military under the fact that your father was such a prominent member of the military and the historical figure. Tell me a little bit about that process.
It was an extremely difficult decision. I struggled with that for, probably darn near, for months. And I remember going in to talk to, to my CO. I was at the Naval Supply Center. I guess it's now known as Fisk, Norfolk at the time, and just kind of, having a sit down and just letting them know that, I had decided to do that. Growing up in a military family and, spending pretty much, my whole life with the Navy, I had visions of making a career of it. And, certainly going in, that's what I planned on doing. I think that had I been able to, pursue a career in aviation, obviously there would have been a much higher chance of that, but that just, that wasn't in the cards. And I'm okay with that. I truly enjoyed, my time active and reserve with the Navy, but, met my wife. We got married when I very early on as a JO. My wife is a psychologist, and she had a career and a number of things. So I think for a number of reasons we just decided that it would be a good time just to kind of settle down. I think that's the other piece of it for me. Growing up, we moved, and I'm not sure if this is still common or not, but, my folks moved over the course of my father's entire career over 31 times.
Yeah.
And, I went to 3 high schools in 4 years.
Yeah.
So we were just constantly on the move. And, So I think that was a factor as well. Just kind of was ready to, to settle down a little bit. And since I was not, was not going to be able to go aviation, just, decided that would be, that would be the right thing for me and for the family.
Well, I asked you that question not to put you on the spot, even though you handled it very well.
Oh,
I asked that question because I believe that a lot of guys struggle with that decision to get out or stay or what to do, and it's got to be a pretty tough decision, especially when you come from military families with lineage. Uncles, grandfathers, brothers, cousins who are all career military officers as well. So I appreciate your response. It was really heartfelt. I appreciate that.
absolutely.
So I don't see any other questions in the chat. Is there anyone, panelists or anybody else? If not, I'll turn it back over to Bruce to close us out.
All right, hearing none. Bruce, we thank you on behalf of the NNOA Transition Assistance Team. We thank you for an outstanding presentation and sharing your heartfelt experiences as you transition from the military, before, after, the good and the bad, and I know and I trust that this information will be helpful for someone else that's transitioning from the service. It'll be available on the NNOA website. So again, thank you, and have a great evening.
All right. Thank you. You all have a good evening.
All right. Take care.
All right.